The morning sun of New Dagu rose slowly over the green valleys and small villages that dotted the landscape. It was a peaceful world, far from the troubles and wars that happened in other parts of the galaxy. The people who lived here had come from Earth many generations ago, during the early days of space travel. They built their cities carefully with gardens and parks, believing they had found a place where they could live safely and never need to fight again. But on this morning, something very wrong was about to happen. Deep below the peaceful surface, in a hidden research station called the Archive, Dr. Haewon Lee sat in front of many glowing screens and computers. She was a smart woman with quick dark eyes and hands that moved fast across the keyboard. Her job was to study old signals and messages from long ago. She loved this work because it felt like being a detective who looked at the past instead of solving crimes in the present. As Haewon drank her morning tea, something on the screens made her stop. A pattern, a very strange pattern that should not exist. The old jump gate, the huge machine that sat on the far side of the planet, was waking up. The jump gate had been dead for 300 years. No one used it anymore. Everyone said it was broken and could never work again. But now energy was moving through it. Something was coming. Something very big. Haewon's hands shook a little as she sent an urgent message to the government office. The message said, "Jump gate is active. Unknown energy signature. We may have visitors." She pressed the send button and waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. No one answered her message. The government office was always slow. They always said, "We will look at this later," but later might be too late. While Haewon waited for answers, she did not know that very far away something enormous was happening. In the deep black space beyond the jump gate, a fleet of ships was moving. These were not small ships. These were warships, the biggest machines of war ever made. Each one was the size of a small mountain. The ships were silver black with sharp edges and weapons that could destroy entire cities. They belonged to the Kethvar Dominion. Inside the largest ship, on the bridge where the leaders commanded the forces, stood the most powerful warrior in the entire Dominion. His name was Krathnor, but people called him Krathnor the Magnificent. He was 9 feet tall with 4 strong arms, and his body was covered with armor that was made of metals harder than any stone. His eyes were cold and yellow, like the eyes of a hunter who had hunted for thousands of years. Krathnor had never lost a battle. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had destroyed enemies that other warriors thought could never be beaten. For 400 years he had been the perfect warrior, the perfect leader, the perfect killer. Krathnor looked at the star map that glowed in front of him. The Dominion had sent him to explore this old jump gate because the rulers wanted to know what was on the other side. For 300 years no one had come from the other side. The Dominion believed the gate led to a dead world, but now Krathnor had to see for himself. He gave the order to the pilots. "Open the gate, move the fleet through." His voice was deep and strong like stones falling down a mountain. The ancient jump gate opened for the first time in 300 years. It was like watching a door open between worlds. The 3 massive warships of Krathnor's fleet moved through one after another. On the bridge, the Kethvar warriors all stood ready. They had weapons. They had armor. They had the strength of champions. What they did not know was that they were about to meet something they had never met before. They were about to meet humans who would not give up. They were about to meet people who understood something very important, that sometimes the smartest warrior wins, not the strongest one. On New Dagu, Jin-Ho Park was working in his garden. He was an old man now, 67 years old. His hair was gray and thin. His face had many lines that showed all the years he had lived and all the hard things he had seen. Jin-Ho had been a military officer a long time ago. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen many young soldiers die. He had lost his left arm in a terrible battle, and now he wore a metal arm instead. But that life was over. He had come to New Dagu to live in peace. He wanted to grow flowers and eat good food and watch the sunset. He did not want to fight anymore. As Jin-Ho was cutting the flowers in his garden, the sky suddenly filled with shadows. 3 massive ships appeared above the city. They were so big that they blocked out the sun. Jin-Ho looked up and knew immediately what was happening. He had seen war before. He had felt that feeling before. The feeling that everything was about to change. The feeling that people were about to die. The ships moved over the city and stopped. The sky filled with bright light from their weapons. Then explosions. One after another, the government buildings fell. The military towers came down. The power station exploded into fire. The people in the streets screamed and ran. In just a few minutes, the most powerful machines on New Daegu stopped working. The communications towers fell. The weapon systems failed. The colony that had lived in peace for so long was suddenly at war. Jinho watched from his garden as the world he had tried to leave behind came back to find him. He touched his metal arm. He thought of all the old things he had learned. He thought of all the soldiers he had led. He thought of all the ways to survive when everything was falling down around you. He knew that Haewon worked at the archive. He knew that the archive was in a safe place, but she would need help. The old soldier looked up at the ships in the sky. He was not ready for this. He had not wanted this. But life does not always give us what we want. Sometimes life gives us what we need. And what Jinho Park needed to do now was to become a soldier again. He needed to become a leader again. He needed to become the thing he thought he had left behind. He needed to become a fighter. Jinho ran toward the city, toward the explosions, toward the danger. Behind him, his garden of beautiful flowers was forgotten. The peaceful old man was gone. In his place stood the warrior he used to be. And far above, in his massive ship, Krathnor smiled. He thought this would be easy. He thought this planet would surrender in hours. He did not know that he was about to meet the one person in the entire galaxy who could teach him something new. He did not know that everything he believed about strength was about to change. The city of New Daegu fell to the Kethvar in just 3 days. The great warship stayed in the sky above the city, and the Kethvar warriors came down in smaller ships. They were 9 feet tall with their 4 strong arms, and they moved through the streets like giants walking through a child's game. The people of New Daegu tried to fight, but their weapons were old and weak. The Kethvar weapons were made from star metal and fire. The fight was not fair. The fight was not even close. In 3 days, the military leaders gave up. They said, "We cannot win. We must surrender or everyone will die." Krathnor stood in the center of the city and watched his soldiers take control. The people looked at him with fear and wonder. He was the biggest warrior most of them had ever seen. His armor was bright and beautiful and terrible. He was the king of this world now, and everyone knew it. Krathnor waited for the celebration. He waited for the parties. He waited for the people to bow down and worship him. But something was wrong. The people were not celebrating with him. The people were sad. Some were angry. Some were planning something that Krathnor did not understand. Jinho had disappeared into the mountains after the city fell. He had taken some people with him. Not soldiers anymore because the soldiers had given up, but regular people. Farmers, teachers, workers, people who wanted to keep living and not just surrender everything they had built. They moved through the valleys and hiding places that Jinho knew well. He had studied maps of New Daegu before coming to this world. He had prepared for war even when he was trying to live in peace. In the mountains, Jinho taught the people a new way to fight. He taught them that the Kethvar were strong, yes, but they were also slow. They were big, yes, but they were also heavy. They liked to fight in big groups, but Jinho taught his people to fight alone, in small groups using tricks and surprise. He taught them to take small pieces of equipment and turn them into weapons. He taught them that in a war, you do not always have to win the big battles. Sometimes you win by making your enemy tired. Sometimes you win by making your enemy confused. Sometimes you win by refusing to lose. The first attack was small. Jinho's people took food from a Kethvar warehouse. The Kethvar soldiers were surprised. They did not know how the food disappeared. Then another warehouse was hit. Then a power station. Then a water system. The Kethvar could not understand what was happening. Their enemies were not fighting with big weapons. Their enemies were ghost fighters. Their enemies were shadows. Krathnor was very angry. He called Jinho's group resistance and said they were like insects. But insects were harder to catch than he thought. He sent his best warriors into the mountains. They were strong, yes. They had the best weapons, yes. But Jinho was waiting. He had studied the mountains for years while he lived in his garden. He knew where the rocks would fall. He knew where the water would trap soldiers. He knew where the narrow paths would make it hard for big warriors to fight. In one battle, Jinho's people pushed rocks down from the high places. 20 Kethvar soldiers were hurt. In another battle, Jinho challenged a Kethvar warrior to fight 1 against 1. Jinho was old and had only 1 real arm, but he was smart. He used tricks. He knew how to make the big warrior fall down. The Kethvar warrior was shocked. No one had ever beaten them in one-against-one fighting, but Jin-Ho had learned to fight in many wars. He knew secrets that the Kethvar did not know, but then something bad happened. HFY was captured. She had been working with the resistance, sending messages and helping to organize things, but the Kethvar soldiers found her and took her. They brought her to the main camp to be questioned. Jin-Ho heard the news and his heart broke a little. His daughter was in danger, but he also knew something important. He knew that this might be the only chance to get close to Krathnor. So he made a crazy plan. Jin-Ho put on Kethvar armor that his people had taken from defeated soldiers. It was heavy and did not fit him well, but it covered his human face. He walked into the camp like a prisoner. His people helped him. They acted like they were fighting him. They pushed him to the ground in front of the Kethvar soldiers. Then they ran away. The Kethvar soldiers did not know what was happening. They thought they had caught the human leader. They brought Jin-Ho to see Krathnor. When Jin-Ho came before Krathnor, he slowly removed his armor. The great warlord looked down at this old human with one real arm. Krathnor could have killed him with one strike, but something in Jin-Ho's eyes made him stop. Something about the way this human stood without fear, even though death was right in front of him. Krathnor was puzzled. In all his 400 years, he had never seen a human like this. "Why do you not beg for your life?" Krathnor asked. His voice was deep and heavy. Jin-Ho looked up at the great warrior and answered simply, "Because I am not afraid. You can kill my body, but you cannot kill what I believe in. You can conquer this world, but you cannot make us stop fighting for what matters to us. That is something you do not have. That is something no weapon can destroy." Krathnor studied this old human. He had conquered many worlds and destroyed many armies. But he had never met anyone like Jin-Ho Park. He had never met someone who was weak in body but strong in spirit. And for the first time in his long life, Krathnor felt something new. He felt the beginning of understanding. He felt the beginning of change. He decided not to kill Jin-Ho. Instead, he decided to listen, because maybe, just maybe, strength meant something different than he had always believed. In Krathnor's command room, Jin-Ho and the great warlord spoke for many hours. The room was high in the air, in the massive ship that floated above the city. All around them were machines that controlled weapons and soldiers. Maps of the planet showed places where the resistance was fighting. But Krathnor did not look at the maps. He looked at Jin-Ho. "You should fear me," Krathnor said. "I am the most powerful warrior in the galaxy. I have destroyed 100 armies. I have conquered 17 worlds. What do you have? You have an old body. You have one arm made of metal. You have people with no weapons. How can you not fear me?" Jin-Ho sat down even though Krathnor had not asked him to sit. This surprised the great warrior. In the presence of someone so powerful, you should stand and show respect. But Jin-Ho was teaching Krathnor something new without speaking words. He was showing him that humans did not follow the same rules. "I do not fear you," Jin-Ho said. "I respect you because you are a great warrior, but I do not fear you because you cannot take the thing that matters most to me. My body is old, yes. It is breaking down. Maybe I will die soon anyway. But my spirit, my belief in what is right, my love for my people and my daughter, these things you cannot touch. You have the power to destroy my body, but you do not have the power to make me surrender my mind." Krathnor felt something strange inside him. It was like feeling a new color or a new sound. He had never felt this way before. All his life, the Kethvar ruled through fear. They were bigger and stronger than everyone else, so everyone obeyed. But Jin-Ho was teaching him that size and strength were not the only things that mattered. "If you are so strong," Jin-Ho continued, "then why do you need to break everyone? Why do you need to make people afraid? Real strength does not need to show itself all the time. Real strength is quiet. Real strength is knowing you could crush someone but choosing not to. That is true power." Krathnor looked out the window at the world below. His ships were still there. His soldiers were still there. He had conquered this place. But Jin-Ho was making him see that conquering was not the same as understanding. It was not the same as winning in the way that mattered. "I will give you a choice," Krathnor said. "You can bow down to me. You can tell your people to stop fighting. You can surrender completely. Then I will not hurt you or your daughter. You can live, but as my subjects, as my slaves. Or you can keep fighting, and I will destroy everything. I will kill everyone. I will make this world empty. What will you choose, old man?" Jin-Ho stood up. He looked directly into Krathnor's yellow eyes. He was not shaking. He was not afraid. He spoke with a voice that was quiet but very strong. "I will not bow," Jinho said. "Not to you. Not to anyone. Humans do not kneel to gods. We stand beside them as equals, or we die fighting. That is who we are. That is what makes us human. You can kill me. You can kill everyone on this world. But you will never be able to say that you broke us. You will never be able to say that we surrendered our souls. And that warlord is something worth more than life itself." In that moment, something broke inside Crathnor. Not his body, but something in his mind. Something he had believed his whole life suddenly did not seem true anymore. He had always believed that the strong ones won and the weak ones lost. But he was looking at a weak human and seeing something that the Kethvar called strong. He was seeing real power. He was seeing real victory. Slowly, very slowly, Crathnor moved to one knee. Then he moved to both knees. In all of history, no Kethvar had ever knelt before another being. It was against their whole way of thinking. It was against everything they believed. But Crathnor knelt before Jinho. "What are you doing?" one of his commanders shouted from across the room. "Stand up. You are the greatest warrior. You cannot kneel to this human." But Crathnor raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice was different. It was not angry anymore. It was thoughtful. "I kneel," Crathnor said, "not in defeat but in respect. This human has taught me something I should have learned long ago. He has shown me that there is a kind of strength I do not have. The Kethvar are great warriors. We have conquered many worlds, but we have never been truly free. We are slaves to our need for power. We are prisoners of our pride. This human is free. He is free to choose what matters to him. He is free to die for what he believes in. That is a strength the Kethvar have never possessed." The room was very quiet. Every Kethvar warrior was shocked. The greatest of their kind was kneeling. The strongest was bowing. It did not make sense according to everything they had ever learned. But Jinho understood. He understood that Crathnor was making a choice. He was choosing to see things in a new way. He was choosing to be more than just a warrior. He was choosing to become wise. Jinho helped Crathnor stand back up. "Then let us stop this war," Jinho said. "Let us show the galaxy that two different species can stand together as equals. Let us show that victory is not about who is strongest, but about who can change and grow and see the truth." Crathnor nodded. He turned to his commanders. "Send a message to all Kethvar forces. Tell them to stop attacking. Tell them that Crathnor has made a new covenant. We will leave this world in peace. We will speak to the humans as partners, not as enemies. And if anyone in the Dominion disagrees with this decision, they can challenge me. But know this, I have never lost a fight, and I will not lose one now." And in that moment, two great warriors, one young and powerful and one old and wise, began something that would change the entire galaxy. They began showing that being strong did not mean you had to crush everyone around you. They began showing that the greatest victories come not from weapons but from understanding. They began a friendship that would last forever. News of Crathnor's decision traveled fast through the Kethvar forces. Some soldiers were surprised. Some were happy. Some were very angry. In the Kethvar Dominion, showing mercy to conquered people was seen as weakness. To kneel before a weaker being was the worst shame. Crathnor's commanders had to make a choice. They could follow their warlord into this new way of thinking, or they could reject him and choose another leader. On the first day, two commanders challenged Crathnor. They said he had become weak. They said he was no longer fit to lead the Kethvar. They demanded the right to fight him for leadership. Crathnor agreed. He fought them one after another. And even though Crathnor was thinking differently now, his body was still the body of the greatest warrior ever born. He defeated both commanders. He did not kill them, but he hurt them so badly they could not fight anymore. When the other commanders saw this, they understood. Crathnor was still the strongest, but now his strength served a different purpose. Jinho and Crathnor worked together to make the peace real. They met with leaders from both sides. The humans wanted to make sure their people would be safe. The Kethvar wanted to make sure their honor was not lost. Slowly, they created an agreement. The agreement was called the Covenant. The Covenant said that the Kethvar would leave New Daegu and return to their own territory. But it also said that humans and Kethvar would work together as equals. They would share knowledge about science and medicine and technology. They would protect each other from enemies. They would respect each other's way of life. They would prove to the galaxy that two different species could live in peace. Hei-Wan was released from captivity. She ran to her father and hugged him. She could not believe he was alive. She could not believe the war was over. Jinho held his daughter and felt tears on his face. He had not cried in many years, but now he cried because he was alive and she was alive, and somehow they had survived the impossible. Haewon was a smart woman with knowledge of languages and cultures. She saw something in Krathnor's choice that others did not see. She saw that he was trying to bridge two worlds that had never touched before. She decided to help. She learned the Kethvar language. She taught them human words. She translated not just words but ideas. She helped them understand why humans valued things like freedom and choice and love. Back on the world of the Kethvar, leaders were upset about the Covenant. They said Krathnor had given up his chance to take more worlds. They said he had wasted the power of the Dominion. Some of them whispered that Krathnor was no longer fit to be a leader. They wanted to replace him with someone else who would follow the old ways of conquest and control. But Krathnor had something that the other Kethvar leaders did not have. He had learned something new about strength. He said to them, "I have conquered more worlds than any Kethvar alive. I have defeated more enemies than anyone can count. But I have never experienced what I am experiencing now. I am not ruling these humans through fear. I am working with them through respect. This is not weakness. This is true power. True power is not about making people obey you. True power is about making people want to follow you." The Kethvar leaders did not understand, but they also could not challenge Krathnor. He was still the strongest. So they stayed quiet and watched to see what would happen. A new city was built. It was called the City of Two Peoples. In this city, humans and Kethvar lived and worked together. Human builders worked with Kethvar builders to create beautiful buildings. Human doctors worked with Kethvar doctors to heal the sick from both species. Human teachers taught Kethvar students, and Kethvar teachers taught human students. Jinho became the leader of the human resistance that had become the human government. But he did not rule alone. He ruled with Krathnor at his side. They made decisions together. When they disagreed, they talked until they found a way that was good for both peoples. This was something new in the galaxy. This was something beautiful. Other species in the galaxy heard about the Covenant. They heard that the great Kethvar Dominion had made peace with weak humans. They heard that Krathnor had knelt. At first, many thought this was a trick. They thought the Kethvar would attack again. But months passed. Then years passed. The peace held strong. Other species who had been afraid of the Kethvar began to stand taller. They began to see that the Dominion was not all-powerful. They began to make their own agreements. Some started to form alliances against the Kethvar, but Krathnor did not attack them. Instead, he welcomed more peace agreements. He showed that strength could be used for building instead of destroying. The people of New Daegu watched their old leader and their new ally become brothers. They watched as the impossible happened again and again. Krathnor learned to laugh at human jokes even though Kethvar did not usually laugh. Jinho learned to appreciate the Kethvar way of honoring courage and strength. They became not just partners, but true friends. One evening, Jinho and Krathnor stood together on a high place and looked out at the city below. The lights of the city were beautiful. In the distance, they could see the farms where humans and Kethvar worked side by side. They could hear music from the parks where both peoples played together. Jinho spoke first. "This world is no longer called a conquered world," Jinho said. "Now people call it the world of peace. Our world. A world that belongs to both of us and to all the people who live here." Krathnor looked at his friend and smiled. "I learned something from you, Jinho Park," he said. "I learned that the strongest warriors are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who choose to stand up in new ways. They are the ones who are brave enough to change." 5 years after the Covenant, the world had changed completely. New Daegu was no longer just a human colony. It was the jewel of peace in the galaxy. From all over the space, people came to see it. They came to see humans and Kethvar living together. They came to see something that should have been impossible. Jinho Park was now 72 years old. His hair was very gray. His body moved slower than it did before, but his eyes were bright and full of light. He spent his days in a beautiful garden that overlooked the city. The garden had flowers from Earth and plants from the Kethvar world. Everything grew together in peace, just like the people. His metal arm had been upgraded many times. Now it was stronger and more beautiful than ever. It was made from Kethvar star metal, which was harder than anything humans could make. But the important thing was not how strong the arm was. The important thing was what it meant. It meant that a human and a Kethvar had worked together to make something new. It meant that enemies could become helpers. It meant that the future could be different than the past. HFY came to visit her father in the garden. She was a grown woman now, and she was famous across the galaxy. She had created an academy to teach people from different species how to understand each other. She taught languages, but more than that, she taught people to see things from different points of view. She taught them that other species were not strange or evil. They were just different. "Father," she said, sitting down beside him, "I have news. The government wants to make me the director of a new university. A university where humans and Kethvar and other species can study together. They want me to teach them to live in peace like we did." Jinho smiled. He was proud of his daughter. She had taken the lesson that he and Krathnor learned and shared it with the world. "You will do a beautiful job," he said. "You will teach them that peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is the presence of respect. Peace is choosing to understand instead of choosing to fight." As they sat together, a very large shadow fell over the garden. Krathnor arrived. The great warlord was so big that his head was twice as high as the trees. He wore beautiful clothes now, not just military armor. His forearms moved with grace and strength. But the most important thing about him was his smile. The Kethvar did not smile much, but Krathnor had learned to smile when he was happy. "My friends," Krathnor said, his deep voice gentle now, "I am happy to see you. I have been in important meetings all day with the other leaders. They are upset again. They say I am still too weak. They say I should take more worlds for the Dominion. They say I should return to the old ways of conquest." "What did you tell them?" Jinho asked. Krathnor sat down and the ground shook a little under his weight. "I told them the truth," he said. "I told them that I have spent 400 years doing everything they wanted. I have conquered. I have destroyed. I have ruled through fear. And you know what I found? I found that none of it meant anything. None of it made me happy. None of it made me feel like I had accomplished something real. But in these 5 years with my friend Jinho, I have found something different. I have found that working together is better than ruling alone. I have found that creating peace is better than creating death. I have found that the greatest strength is not in your muscles or your weapons. It is in your heart. It is in your ability to change. It is in your willingness to see things in a new way." The sun began to set. The sky turned red and orange and blue. It was beautiful. All 3 of them sat together and watched the light change. HFY spoke softly. "You know," she said, "when you first arrived on this world, I thought we would all die. I thought nothing could stop you. But you stopped yourself. You looked at my father and you saw something that made you want to be different. You saw that there was more to strength than what you had always believed." Krathnor looked at his 2 friends. "I have been thinking," he said. "For many years, the Kethvar believed that an apex predator should never kneel. We believed it was shameful. We believed it was weak, but I have learned something different. Kneeling is not always weakness. Sometimes kneeling is the strongest thing you can do. Sometimes kneeling means you have seen the truth. Sometimes kneeling means you respect something more than yourself." Jinho put his metal hand on Krathnor's shoulder. "I want to tell you something," Jinho said. "If I could do it all again, I would do exactly the same. I would fight you. I would resist you. I would refuse to break. Because in doing those things, I found that you were not my enemy. You were my teacher. You taught me that strength is not always what you think it is. You are strong, Krathnor. Not because you can kill 1,000 warriors. You are strong because you were willing to change your mind. You were willing to learn something new." The 3 friends sat in silence for a long time. The stars began to appear in the night sky. Some of them were from worlds at peace. Some were from worlds still learning how to be at peace. But all of them were connected. All of them were part of the same universe. A universe where an apex predator had knelt before a human veteran and learned that there was more to life than conquest. News of this friendship spread to every corner of the galaxy. The story was told in many languages on many worlds. It became a lesson. It became proof that change was possible. It became hope for all the species that had been at war with each other for so long. If a powerful warlord could change, then maybe everyone could change. If peace was possible between humans and Kethvar, then maybe peace was possible everywhere. The old soldier had taught the mighty warrior something that no weapon could teach. He had taught him that the greatest conquest is not of worlds or people. The greatest conquest is the conquest of yourself. The greatest victory is not defeating your enemies. The greatest victory is turning your enemies into your brothers. And so, on a peaceful evening on New Daegu, under the stars, a human and a Kethvar sat together as equals. They sat as brothers. They sat as proof that the impossible could become real. They sat as proof that strength and respect and wisdom could change the entire galaxy. They sat as proof that an apex predator had never knelt until it stood before a human veteran. And in that kneeling, the universe found hope.